All right, we finished up chapter 6 last week, and the first 6 chapters are historical accounts. And then it was a pretty short class, and then I asked what y'all took out of this, and there were some good answers. But mine is through these first 6 chapters, and as we go forward, faithfulness pays off. We look at these Hebrew, well, they started out as children, and they're men now, but we look at these Hebrew men, and their faithfulness to God is what got them through these ordeals. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 3. We read a little bit of that, but I wanted to go back and touch on this because the book of Proverbs was out before these fellers were. I'm sure they knew this. When we went to D.C., they had a Bible museum, and there was a scribe there that was sitting there writing down the Bible on scrolls. And I asked him where they went, and he said they go to synagogues around the world. But a Hebrew child, he learns the book, which is the Tanakh for them, from an early age. He sits and he writes it down, he copies it, he knows it inside and out. He's taught it very well. So if we go to Proverbs chapter 3, and I think that these Hebrew men personify this right here. It says, "My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments." Why? Well, it tells you as we go on. It says, "For length of days and long life and peace shall they add to thee." And here, peace means completeness, safety, welfare, and contentment. We see where these people were put through, bow or burn, or the lion's den. I don't really think that they were too concerned. They told the king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, said, regardless, we're not going to do this thing. It didn't matter to them. So I really think they personify this. Verse 3 says, "Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man." I believe these first 6 chapters, that's that. But it says, "Forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments." And what was the king said there in chapter 6? He said, "The God which thou servest continually." I like that. Go on down in chapter 3. Let's go to verse 21. Read that whole chapter. It's great, but we'll go down to verse 21. It says, "My son, let them not depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion." Where does wisdom and discretion come from? It comes from the book. It comes from God. "So shall they be life unto thy soul, and grace to thy neck. Then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and thy sleep shall be sweet." And I don't think you ever know sweet sleep till you know Christ. You have that security in eternity. That's some sweet sleep right there. "Be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. For the Lord shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken." And this word "taken" here means a snare. And we could go all kinds of directions with that. It could be a snare to our literal foot, which I don't think that's what it's talking about. I think it's talking about a snare to our soul. He's ever vigilant. He's watching out for us if we'll just pay attention a little bit. It's an interesting thing how this book works out if you pay attention to it. But I just wanted to go back and hit this Proverbs chapter 3 because I believe that these Hebrew children are a testament to it. I mean, God did what he said he would do. So let's go to Daniel chapter 7. Can everybody hear okay? You hear okay, brother? I'll get you one of them horns like you used to. All right, Daniel chapter 7. This is not in chronological order. Chapter 7 and 8 actually fall chronologically in between chapters 4 and 5. Okay, but we're doing it as it's written. Chapter 7 is called the times of the Gentiles. And you can read about this. Jesus talked about it in Luke 21:24. And about the second half of the verse is talking about Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And the fullness of the Gentiles and the fullness of the church is two different things. And we'll get into that a little bit as we get on in the book of Daniel. The times of the Gentiles started with King Nebuchadnezzar. And it will end with the last world leader, which is the Antichrist. Okay? Let's start in chapter 7. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, he's the one that messed his drawers there when he saw the handwriting on the wall. Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. It didn't say matter, it said matters. So there's some things here that has got his attention. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And a lot of times in the Bible, the sea refers to people, multitudes of people, okay? So the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and the four great beasts, I'm going to turn that off. Y'all are. It says the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Everything I've studied on this, they believe, I don't know if y'all have ever seen any some of the ancient statues that came out of Babylon, but it was a winged creature with a man's head. That was a representation of Babylon. And I believe the man's heart it's speaking to, and then this is my conjecture, is Nebuchadnezzar. Because if you remember, he had to be put out to pasture, eat on grass, and grow hair and nails and all that until he came to his senses. And I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that through his relationship with Daniel, and I think it was a pretty good relationship, I believe I would not be surprised to see Nebuchadnezzar in heaven. But just because of that last, 6 or 8 verses there, it speaks of him. Anyway, so this line we believe is Babylon. It says, and behold another beast, a second like to a bear. And it's saying these things are like to a lion and like to a bear. And it raised up itself on the side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. They believe, everything I've studied, that this is Persia. It's huge, it's powerful, but it's slower. It moves slower. And the Persian army under Xerxes fielded 2.5 million man army. That's historical. That's huge, you know. And they eventually conquered Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia before they came to an end. And this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. They believe this is Greece. It was fast. I mean, Alexander the Great conquered the known world by the time he was 29. They said he laid down on his bed and wept because there was nothing else to conquer. He went plumb down into India, and that's where he got the elephants to use in his army. I mean, he got it happening. But all these things happen because God wants them to happen. Okay? Let's see here. And we get down here at the bottom of this, it says, the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. When Alexander died, on his deathbed, and I read this somewhere a while back, and so I can't tell you where I found it, but they asked him who they should give the kingdom to. And he said, let the strong have it. He was done with it. So what happened is 4 of his generals ended up splitting the Greece's kingdom into 4 different divisions. And I believe that this account we're reading is God's perspective to Daniel. I'm showing you how I see this for you to understand. That's what I believe. And we'll get on that a little bit. So these 4 generals, after Greece had conquered everything, took it over. And that's all history for us. For Daniel, it wasn't. Hello. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible. Now, he doesn't compare this to anything, any animal that he knows. He just knows dreadful and terrible. So this vision here particularly really messes with Daniel. And we'll see that as we go. And strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I missed something, and I'm sorry. Where we were talking about the bear, and it said it had 3 ribs in its mouth. That was those 3 countries I told you that they had conquered. We got to go back here just a second. Back here in verse 5, talking about was likened to a bear, and it said it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between its teeth. And that's Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. That's the 3 countries that it conquered, which we believe to be Persia. I missed that. I apologize. So, these first 3 beasts were compared to animals, but he doesn't have a name for this other beast. He just said it was great and terrible. Well, Rome, if you read any history, Rome took pride in what it conquered and destroyed. All these other kingdoms, they would pull you in. They'd assimilate you and take the best of what you had to offer and add it to their society. Not Rome. Ooh. The Roman army was a fearsome machine. When you enlisted in the Roman army, it was for a 25-year stint. And if you survived that 25 years, you were given land and you were given citizenship. That was why it was so important when we read about Paul. Paul was a Roman citizen. They gave him rights. That's the reason you read in there when they found out he was a Roman citizen, they was like, uh-oh. It gave them rights, and it gave them some power. So if you survived this 25-year ordeal in the service, you were given land and citizenship. When the Roman army showed up on the scene, you see them coming across the hill to your city, they would surround it, dig a moat around it, and build a wall. And they were prepared, and I've read different stories, but they were prepared to stay from 25 to 35 years and starve you out. You got enough to live at the house for 25 years? They just waited. They didn't fight. They just waited. They had plenty of men. I'm sorry? Yeah, they had plenty of people. They just let them sit there. Yeah, we'll wait you out. So, and they were ruthless. You know, a lot of times when they conquered a city, they'd take the inhabitants and crucify them for miles. They'd crucify them in the next city, leave them hanging on the side of the road. They were merciless. But it's weird, but once they conquered you and it brought you in, they pretty much let your area governors just have control over you. And we see that during the trial of Jesus. We see that. So they would have a little say-so in the matter, but as long as you kept everybody under control, they didn't care. You know, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but anyway, they were prepared to stay for 25 to 35 years from what I've read. So we see this beast, and we believe it to be the Roman Empire, and you can actually break the two, you know, it goes down in that vision we saw. The statue starts out with a head of gold and ends up with the feet of iron and clay. You can divide that iron and then iron and clay into Rome 1 and Rome 2, and we'll get into that because technically Rome's never, we'll get into that. I don't have enough backdrop on it yet for you to go into that. So verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Oh, yeah. So the Antichrist shows up on the scene. He's the little horn. Three of these other horns, which are nations, didn't agree with his politics, so he explained it to them better. He plucked them up. He conquered them. And that's future for us. This hasn't happened yet. I don't know how close we are, but it's coming. In ancient times, we don't get the horn deal. But in ancient times, you know, they believed that an animal's power was in its horn. You know, you had rhino, and you see all these trophy bucks, you know, non-typicals are the sought after, but the power, they believed, was in its horns. And what's that saying? Mess with the bull, get the horn. You know, they believed that's where its power was. So the horn became a symbol of power and strength, but that don't really click with us. But that's what these nations are powerful. Verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. This is an interesting phrase. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. We know who the Ancient of Days is, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. And if you look up wheels, it means chariot in this instance. But to be cast down, we think to be cast down will be Tony throwing something down here to me. But this phrase here, what's so interesting, means to be placed or set. So there's a set of thrones going to be set in place, okay? And remember, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. Remember this. You know, in Matthew chapter 13, Jesus was trying to tell us. In Ephesians chapter 3, Paul was trying to tell us that there's getting ready to be something revealed. Well, if you go to, I believe it's Revelation chapter 4. And I think this is what this is referring to. Because you got to figure, these 24 thrones, I believe, is elders of the church. Well, the church hadn't been introduced in the Old Testament yet, okay? So, let's see here. Let's just start in verse 1. It says, After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like jasper and sardine stone. And there was a rainbow around about the throne, in sight like unto an emerald. And round about the throne were 24 seats. And upon these seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment. They had on their head crowns of gold, and out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. I think that verse right there is showing this scene that we're seeing. I don't know that as a fact, but I believe that. And I probably wouldn't have caught that if I hadn't seen that work. Because the way it's written, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, comma, and the Ancient of Days did sit, comma. You know, it's the way it was written didn't set right with me, so I looked up that word cast down, and it says to be placed. So, you know, these 24 elders that we read in Revelation have to have a place to sit. So I believe it's talking about the church there. But I don't know that, but I feel pretty confident it does. Verse 10, it said, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000s times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. That's serious business right there. You know, what's it saying in Philippians? Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. When we stand before him, we'll be on our own. You know. Well, technically, we won't be on our own. If you have Jesus Christ, he'll be your advocate. You know, we won't be by ourselves. Let's see here. Verse 11. I beheld, then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld, even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. This is the Antichrist it's speaking of. He's going to be cast into this flame before the 1,000-year reign starts, before the millennial reign starts in Revelation. So at the end of this 1,000-year reign, he's still in there. We're going to cast in another. You know, I mean, that's hard for me to get my mind around. You know, we can't. It's hard to get your mind around a 10-year span, much less 1,000. But he's going to be tormented for 1,000 years while we're here on earth ruling and reigning with Christ. Before we'll get on into that, what this chapter 7 is really setting up is a trip into Revelation. It's going to be a trip into the future. It's pretty interesting how it all works out. Verse 12, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. God has put all these things in place for a reason. Now you think how much, you know, when the Romans came along and conquered all this stuff, they built roads, they built infrastructure. I mean, they had paved roads then, before Christ was here, you know. So all this infrastructure and these roads and all this technology was there to further the gospel, in my opinion. You know, that's just my thought on it. If he had somebody willing to spread it. It took the disciples a while to get in gear and get going. You know, those 4 generals we talked about, which is verses 12 is talking about the rise of Rome, I think, right here, and then in 13. Cassandra was one of the generals. His empire fell in 146 BC. The next general was Lysimachus, and it fell in 133. Seleucus' empire lasted till 64 BC, and Ptolemy, which we're more familiar with, we've seen his name more, lasted until 31 BC. So I believe God used Rome to set this infrastructure up so that he could get the gospel on out there a little quicker. I can't say that for sure, but that's what I think. Verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. You know, and Christ in the New Testament refers to himself as the Son of Man, I don't know how many times, but it's several times. So he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, that there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Now, how far in the future was that for Daniel? You think about what God is allowing him to see here. I'd say Daniel was, well, we'll read about it if we might not get that far today, but interesting. Verse 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by. So I believe his experience here is a lot like John's in Revelation. He's communicating. So was he in his spirit in this place in time? Did God do that for him? You know, it's what he did for John to allow, and he was able to communicate with other people. And to one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts which are four kings, which shall rise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. Here he's asking. He wants to know about this fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And I wish that the disciples would have asked Jesus more questions when over Matthew, like Daniel's asking here. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. We'll stop right there, because we get into some detail that I would like to have time to spend on a little bit. In verse 20, he's talking about the Antichrist again. We'll stop right there. We'll stop around verse 19. And we'll try to pick up there again next week, because we get into the time and times and half a time. And this is a very important time. And I'll show you why, because the Holy Spirit goes to great lengths throughout this book to explain this period of time. He's wanting you to pay attention, wanting me to pay attention. But we'll get into that. We'll take a break here and